Imagine being the person who gives the entire Western world its first real detailed look at ancient India. Well, that's exactly what a Greek diplomat named Megasthenes did. But his story, it's not just about exploration. It's a genuine historical puzzle, and at its center is a book that literally changed history and then completely vanished.
And that brings us to this huge central paradox. Think about this. Our most important account of one of India's greatest dynasties, the Mauryan Empire, comes from a book that no longer exists, not a single copy. How is that even possible?
The book was called the Indica, which basically means about India. And it was supposed to be this incredible, complete description of the land, the people, the culture, the government, you name it. But trying to find a copy today? It's like chasing a ghost.
And I'm not exaggerating. Not one single complete copy of Megasthenes' original manuscript has survived. It's just gone. Poof. So if the book is gone, how on earth do we have any idea what it said?
Well, the only reason we know anything at all is because later Greek and Roman writers, historians like Strabo, Arrian, and Diodorus Siculus, quoted him. They summarized parts of Megasthenes' work in their own books. So we only see the Indica through their eyes, pieced together fragment by fragment. So who was this man who wrote such an influential yet totally elusive book? Megasthenes wasn't a conqueror or a merchant. He was a Greek diplomat, a highly educated observer, sent on a crucial mission to what was then a rising superpower.
Okay, so a little context here is super fascinating. After Alexander the Great died, his massive empire just shattered. One of his top generals, Seleucus I, ended up in a bit of a border dispute with the founder of the Mauryan Empire, the legendary Chandragupta Maurya. But instead of an all-out war, they actually made a deal. And as part of that peace treaty around 302 BCE, Megasthenes was sent as an ambassador to the Mauryan capital, Pataliputra.
So as an ambassador, Megasthenes had a front-row seat. He got to see the Mauryan Empire at the absolute height of its power. And thankfully for us, he became a chronicler, writing down basically everything he saw.
He was absolutely blown away by the capital city, Pataliputra. He described this massive, thriving metropolis protected by enormous wooden walls with hundreds of towers and gates. But it wasn't just its size that was impressive, it was how sophisticated it was. He talks about a complex bureaucracy with specialized committees running everything from foreign affairs to public works, a real well-oiled machine. And he looked beyond the city, too. He made this remarkable observation about the society. He said that agriculture was considered so essential, so sacred, that farmers were treated as a protected class. They were left completely untouched, even when armies were marching right through their fields.
And of course, he was deeply impressed by the Mauryan military. He described it as this formidable machine. You know, it had all the usual stuff, infantry, cavalry, chariots. But the thing that really stunned the Greeks, the thing they talked about constantly, were the war elephants, just a terrifying and powerful force on any ancient battlefield.
But his observations weren't always spot on. When he tried to describe the social structure, he saw something very different from what Indian sources tell us. He claimed that society was divided into exactly 7 groups. And that very specific number, well, that's where we run into a problem.
And this specific point brings us to the biggest challenge with the Indica, which is trying to separate what Megasthenes actually saw with his own eyes from what he thought he saw, colored by his own very Greek background and worldview.
So what are we supposed to make of this guy? On the one hand, he gives us these priceless, you-are-there details about a lost world. But on the other, he records things that just don't quite add up. So where did he go wrong?
Okay, his biggest error by far was about the social structure. He lists 7 classes based entirely on what people did for a living. You had philosophers, farmers, soldiers, and so on. This completely misses the much more complex, traditional 4-part Varna system, which was based on duty and birth, not just your job. He was basically trying to fit Indian society into familiar Greek categories, and it just didn't work.
And his account is sprinkled with other issues, too. He wrote about these fantastical, mythical races of people, stories he almost certainly just picked up from local legends. Plus, it's pretty clear he didn't speak the local languages, which means so much of his information was filtered through translators or was just plain secondhand gossiped.
So you might be thinking, okay, if the book is lost and the parts we have are filled with mistakes, why are we even talking about it, right? Why does this ghost of a text still matter so much to historians today?
Here is the bottom line. For all its problems, the Indica is absolutely vital. It is one of the only detailed, eyewitness accounts of the early Mauryan Empire written by an outsider. Without these fragments, our picture of that entire incredible era would have a massive, gaping hole in it.
Historians today don't just take his word as gospel. Of course not. Instead, they treat his work like one critical piece in a much, much bigger puzzle. They carefully compare his descriptions with Indian texts, like the Arthashastra, and they cross-reference it with actual archaeological evidence from Mauryan sites. By putting all these pieces together, they can start to filter out the fantasy and build a much clearer picture of what Mauryan life was really like.
Ultimately, Megasthenes and his lost book leave us with a really powerful question about history itself. It's a stark reminder of how much of our understanding of the past is shaped by the perspective of the storyteller, especially when that storyteller is a stranger in a strange land. It really makes you wonder, what other histories do we only know through the eyes of an outsider?